in your experience and what you're doing day to day with dealer partners and whatnot, is the best way to move a business from where they are, which is like, must have the legalese and it's got to say this and it's got to have that and the price needs to be this and the picture needs to be this, where they get all fixated on all those elements? How do we move them from that type of focus to making a deeper connection with the marketplace?
I wish the answer was more of an it depends than it being so cut and dry. Mm-hmm. But the answer 9 times out of 10 there is going to rest in data. There's a clear-cut difference between a standardized co-op ad where everything looks the same, has all the same junk and numbers on it as everybody else, and something that's branded and unique and personal and explains who you are, has a real person, isn't the same thing that they're used to seeing. If it's something cool, then it's gonna have a different reaction from everybody. And whenever we compare, it doesn't matter if it's new or used, when we're comparing those different ad sets, even though they might have different end goals, always have better conversions. They always have better click-through rates. It's clear to see why.
No, somebody else. It's
He just takes a bunch of other people. He's actually brilliant. He's like Oprah. He's an aggregator of musicians. He doesn't do anything. He just yells his name and sometimes says the chorus. He doesn't actually make music.
He was just at 10X. I can't remember his name. He performed and I had to text my wife and ask who he was. And then that song came on. All I want to do is win, win, win. I was like,
oops.
Yeah, can't remember his name.
He wasn't made to stick.
He wasn't made to stick, which actually leads perfectly into the conversation today, which is I want to have a discussion with you about marketing stickiness. How sticky is your marketing messaging? How sticky is your brand? I've been telling you, how long have I been telling you about this little clip that I want to show you with Bob Odenkirk? It's been at least.
The answer is 3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks. So I don't know if I've ever revealed this secret on the show, but I like watching Hot Ones. If you're not familiar with Hot Ones, it's by First We Feast. They make a bunch of hot sauces, like chicken wing hot sauces, or I guess you could use them on a whole bunch of other things. But they created a little YouTube show a few years ago where they interview celebrities, musicians, all those sorts of things, actors, playwrights, and authors and everything. But the interview happens while they eat a chain of chicken wings that get progressively hotter and hotter and hotter until they reach the last chicken wing, which I think has a 2 million plus Scoville. But I wanted to get you on here, Whit, because on a recent episode, Sean, the guy who does the interviews Bob Odenkirk, who probably a lot of people know as Better Call Saul. He was a writer on SNL. He's acted in a bunch of things. He's very, very smart comedically, which is a pleasant surprise finding out that he's also a good dramatic actor. But he's on it. And so I want to pull it up. We're going to pull it up here. I'm not going to give it away, but this leads into the convo about marketing stickiness. And I thought of you and I thought we need to talk about this.
But why don't we have chicken wings right now? Actually, might
I wish
be a better
we had
question.
chicken wings. I know. I wish we should have both ordered like Buffalo Wild Wings and just been sitting here gnawing down on delectable dorsal meat whilst watching it. Okay, so here it is. Here's the kind of our view of this, reaction to this. I thought this was interesting.
Did you have a favorite Chicagoland regional TV commercial? You know, it doesn't matter how many decades removed.
What's his face? We made fun of it on Mr. Show. Schmerler. Schmerler Ford. Come on, you don't remember this?
Maybe it was just past mine, because like I
In the good old summertime. Hi, here's Schmerler here, your singing Ford dealer. This week we have...
That's it. That is the whole bit that I wanted to talk to you about.
My brain doesn't even go to the fact that he remembers the jingle. My brain goes to the fact that I really hope this singing Ford dealer has been tagged in the comments on this and then produced some type of reaction, because they just think about how many people watch this show.
We actually need to look up now I'm curious that you bring that up. I need to look up whether or not Schmerler Ford in the Chicago area exists anymore. Here's what I thought was interesting about this. I've watched probably a good 100 of these interviews over the days, over the years. And I think I kind of perked up at the fact that this is the first one where we have a guy who's recounting. I don't know why. I don't even know why Sean Evans felt the need to ask him if he had a favorite commercial from growing up in the Chicago area. Lo and behold, Bob Odenkirk does. And fun fact, it's for a Ford dealership and he remembers the whole thing. I wanted to get your take on this. Why, in your opinion, all these probably 30 plus years later, does someone like Bob Odenkirk remember a car dealer's jingle and commercial from back in the day?
Reverse Stockholm syndrome, exposure. He was exposed to it so many times that it's burned into his head, and there was something about it that had just enough uniqueness or weirdness, which most people won't play into, fun factor, if you will, that he remembered it. I have a similar experience. There was a dealer in my hometown, and they had a jingle, and it was Canada's Huggable Car Dealer, and it's burned into my brain. It was burned there when I was not old enough to drive a car, let alone buy a car, right. But it's still there. Did I ever buy a car from them? No. Did Bob ever buy a car from the singing Ford dealer?
Who knows? Schmerler?
Yeah.
Do you think, back to what you just said, though, you said that, okay, Stockholm Syndrome, exposure. Are we saying that it doesn't even necessarily have to be a good ad for it to stick?
I would 100% agree that it doesn't need to be a good ad to stick.
So beyond frequency, like how often it is, pushed out there, what other elements should dealers be considering in an effort to make themselves more sticky in the market?
I would say make it simple. The keep it simple, stupid KISS philosophy. If it's a big, long thing that you can't explain in that 10-second elevator pitch, if you will, nobody else is going to remember it if you can't put it into 10 seconds. So it's about take the thing that's important, whether it's do they need to know in the instance of this guy that you exist and who you are, or whatever they need to know about you. Why are you special if they might know you already exist? That USP value statement, and condensing it, making it simple every single time they're exposed to it.
It reminds me of some other examples. So you gave an example of an ad for a car dealer in particular, but I'm also thinking about if I were to say in the context of advertising, if I were to say tiny lizard, it would probably be pretty quick for a lot of people to go, oh, Geico.
Yeah.
Or if I showed a stencil on a yellow background of the Statue of Liberty, people in America would go, oh, Liberty Mutual, Liberty, 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 right? Like little jingles. But I think more important, where I want to maybe peel back the onion layers for those listening or watching, is what you're talking about isn't necessarily the jingle, although that's an element of it. But I think that's the piece, whether it's the jingle or the graphic or the logo. I think those are the pieces that people get fixated on, not realizing that there are more layers to why something becomes sticky.
No. I also wonder too, I've done a lot of research around the concept of nostalgia as it relates to marketing. And I wonder how much maybe me, you, Bob are getting tripped up on the fact that it's nostalgic rather than it may have been adequate marketing. It's all burned into us. But can I think of something that has that similar effect that I've been exposed to in the last 5, even 10 years? Not as quickly. Would you say the same?
Yeah. And I'm getting old, so I can't remember.
Unrelated. With so my first gray hair.
Actually, funny you say that too. You and I and the rest of the Flex team were recently in Philly, and we hired a photographer, and we were exchanging some messages the other night. And I said that she was trying to get a vibe, as you know, on color grading and tone. And I thought, well, that's a little too cold that's closer to where we want. It's a little too dark and cold. We need to add just a tinge of warmth back. And so she came back with 2 or 3 examples, and I said, yes, that's closer to what I'm looking for. It still has that vibey, like, desaturated, but just with a tinge of warmth to make us feel like we're living the best days of summer. That's how I
we've actually left the house and seen the sunshine.
Yes. And what you just said about nostalgia, I find really interesting, because she wrote back, and just in articulating the feeling that way, she wrote back and she goes, man, you guys are so awesome. And that was so poetic and moving. And in that moment, I realized that probably took her back to a feeling, based on what you're saying, that probably took her back to a feeling that best describes good moments in her life, in the same way that an ad or an ad jingle or a message or a song or whatever can do the same.
Yeah, even a smell, but we never get the opportunity to play with smells.
You mean
I don't think I want to. The Subway sandwich door while you're in the airlock before you even make it to Subway, and it's just not that it's what you want to remember.
Smell can be a brand, which is interesting. I mean, aside from perfume, when I smell cow manure, I immediately think of Chilliwack, British Columbia.
I'm alarmed that you immediately go from perfume to cow manure, but
technically all the same thing. It's just
it's
our brain likes
brand,
one
though.
over another.
We've all been walking somewhere and somebody has the same cologne or perfume as somebody we know that we spent time with, and there's that.
It also brings into the spotlight another concept that I don't feel really gets talked a lot about in automotive, partially because it maybe it's complex. It makes perfect sense to me, but that's the marketing level sophistication, right? The 5 levels of how sophisticated a market comes in its understanding of a brand and its products or services, which leads me to basically this nostalgia that you're talking about. The highest level of brand level or marketing level sophistication is all emotional. It's the attachment that we form emotionally to whatever it is. And nostalgia, I see playing a part of that. How, in your experience and what you're doing day to day with dealer partners and whatnot, is the best way to move a business from where they are, which is like, must have the legalese and it's got to say this and it's got to have that and the price needs to be this and the picture needs to be this, where they get all fixated on all those elements? How do we move them from that type of focus to making a deeper connection with the marketplace?
I wish the answer was more of an it depends than it being so cut and dry. Mm-hmm. But the answer 9 times out of 10 there is going to rest in data. There's a clear-cut difference between a standardized co-op ad where everything looks the same, has all the same junk and numbers on it as everybody else, and something that's branded and unique and personal and explains who you are, has a real person, isn't the same thing that they're used to seeing. I get, I'm sure the whole planet knows I'm obsessed with my Chevy Colorado, and it's all good. I flick through after the first time, which I watched because I'm me and I'm in marketing for car dealers, not because I wanted to see it. Every time I'm scrolling through Instagram or TikTok or something like that, there's GM Chev ads, and they're the same darn thing they've been putting in Stanley Cup season since I was born. There's 3 of them driving in the dirt on the mountain, and it's the same thing. I don't care. If it's something cool, then it's gonna have a different reaction from everybody. And whenever we compare, it doesn't matter if it's new or used, when we're comparing those different ad sets, even though they might have different end goals, they always have better conversions. They always have better click-through rates. It's clear to see why.
How do you feel about when brands affiliate with celebrities? And what I mean by that is, I'm thinking of an auto group in Alberta, and they've got billboards all over the city of Edmonton with Connor McDavid, right? Lots of placement, celebrity placement. Does that risk in your opinion, isolating people that are not into hockey or have no clue who Connor McDavid is?
I don't think it would isolate them more than something generic would, but would have the potential to bring in those people that would be fans or are hockey fans.
Why is that? Explain that a little bit for some people who may not understand why an influencer or an athlete or something might help make a connection to their business.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have all of these things. I have the truck, I have the life of playing hockey, and there's really passionate camps in truck owners, and there's really passionate camps in hockey teams. So you could even argue it the other way where, but half the world might hate McDavid and they go, I don't want to buy that. But would that stop me from buying a Chevy again? No. Could it potentially seduce somebody that is a big fan that sees this as an example? Potentially. It's creating that connection. Are these two things related? Whereas if, we see it with golf and brands like BMW, where there is a clear connection there. It's why you see Rolex ads at the Masters, but you don't see Rolex ads on the boards at a hockey game. There's relatable audiences between the two.
What I think interesting to that point is it also shows that you can, through various channels, tell multiple different stories at the same time to different people. People that are into golf or into hockey are getting the story told to them. Maybe it's the same story, but it's getting told to them in a way that they relate to. And I remember back in the day studying media and watching countless interviews with actors and actresses about the characters that they were portraying. And it was I always found it fascinating about how they would speak about their character as if it was a real person, somebody that they made this real connection to. And you just said the word connection. And I think that's so interesting because I used to think it was so dumb. And now I realize, and maybe this is me getting old, or maybe this is just perfect storytelling and marketing and emotional connection. But I can get so deep into a show that I feel personally invested in the character as if they're a real person. Like it's weird how they're fictitious, but that you feel a real connection to them, which is the same thing I think dealerships and businesses need to be focused on in how they're making those connections with their marketplace, because it's not just about price. It's not just about picture. It's not just about what product you actually have. It's about how well, to your point, what I'm picking up what you're putting down. It's about how well you can create an emotional connection with your audience.
Absolutely. And I even think about it like this. I would, if I had the right Ford dealer, I'd buy my next Chevy from my next Ford dealer. You're not just pigeonholed by brand. I can still buy a used 2023 Chevy right now.
And you don't even care if you're buying it from the dealership who owns the franchise for that brand.
I would care more about how I would be treated.
Interesting.
And people don't display that enough. Or when they do, they make it incredibly boring.
Right.
And I mean that's 50% of what we do is trying to unboring a lot of these things that aren't boring, or create something that is a bigger message than you'll get a lifetime of free oil changes.
Right.
Yes, there's value there, but is it exciting?
If you had a blank slate and you just walked into any dealership, and said, "Hey, here's a quick activity that you can do to get clear on creating a more emotional connection with your market through your marketing efforts." Like, what are some things that they should be doing or thinking about? Like, if they were to just sit down and you had them document without any reservation something they could do or something about themselves that they could show more to build that connection, what types of things would you be looking for?
the frequency and how you can demonstrate those things. And what I mean by that is if you say, oh, we care and we have a really transparent process, yes, that should be front and center. It should be everywhere. But it becomes about that storytelling that you mentioned and weaving it into the different pieces. So an example would be in a vehicle description, demonstrate that, not just it's clean, say we fully detailed this from end to end. So it's used, but it feels like brand new because we want you to feel like it's brand new to you in every single piece that you're touching. Demonstrate it in the photos, have the over exaggerated person hopping in the back seat and going like, look how clean this is in the video or whatever it might be, to touch it every single spot that you possibly can.
I love that. It reminds me of one more thing, and I didn't plan this. So while I'm talking, I'm going to try and find it. But while I'm finding it, I want to ask you this question as a tee up. Do you think that businesses at large, and not even pigeonholing to dealerships, but do you think that the desire to show as perfect gets in the way from ever being able to do that kind of stuff effectively?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, when it's an excuse not to do it at all. No, when it's a failed attempt. So we see, even just at a micro level, dealers merchandising vehicles, but instead of a photo that looks good, it's sideways and it looks like my grandfather took it.
Right.
Who's never seen a camera before. So the failure in the attempt is better than no attempt at all.
Okay. So I want to share this with you. As we all know, Ryan Reynolds, brilliant marketer. You at times, I think, have made comments to why is he so appealing to so many dudes? And I think it's because he just represents what we wish we could have for a physique and all of the dad jokiness that we all admire.
You've cracked the code of why all men love Ryan Reynolds.
I think so. So recently, I thought this was actually really interesting. This caught my eye. As you know, at Flex, we recently changed our payment processing company from a Canadian company called Nuvve to Stripe. And we had all those reasons for it, and I don't regret the decision at all, and it's been absolutely delightful. But what I found out is that Ryan Reynolds, when T-Mobile came in and bought his Mint Mobile company, which was making huge waves here in the United States, he essentially took all of that money and invested it in Nuvve. And so here's the commercial, and this ties into the desire to come across as perfect and what do we lose in that pursuit of just always being like super perfect. And this is the commercial. So here we go. Oh.
This is Phil, CEO of Nuvve, the Canadian tech company. Now, how's a Canadian tech company different from an American tech company? Phil, how many rockets are you currently building?
Well, actually, my kids and I, Ryan, we need toys.
No, actual rockets, Phil. You know, the huge metal that fly to space.
Oh, actual rockets, none.
Tell me something, Phil. What's your vision for Nuvve?
We want to make sure we're the most innovative.
So bored right now. Are you on social media?
Oh boy, I think I have one. I haven't logged in a while. Let me find it.
Amazing. It's time for a global tech company from Canada.
No, we're more of a payments company, right? I found it. People can follow me at...
No one's going to follow you, Phil.
Taking something as boring as payments and putting a little storytelling, convincing the CEO that he can be a goofball and why that would actually be a good business case, and then wrapping that into a script. What intrigues me about that is that it's perfectly executed, but highlights imperfection. Like, Ryan Reynolds playing on the fact that, oh, this is so boring. Like, nobody wants to hear anything about this. This is the most boring thing ever. In the same way that I think, to your point about detailing cars, there are TikToks and Instagrams that go viral of guys that do nothing but detail cars. And I immediately thought, oh man, that would be so easy for a dealership to throw a body cam on their detailers But then, my immediate reaction was they would never go for it because it would show how imperfect the vehicle is that they just brought in.
Yeah. Or it shows how good their reconditioning process is. It's a bad, brilliant idea.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I asked the question that way about trying to be too perfect. Like, oh no, we can only show this vehicle once it's ready to be merchandised, versus what you just said, which I think our marketing brain goes to, is no, this is incredible storytelling. It's something that people want to watch. There's surprisingly large amounts of people that find it so satisfying to see something go from disgusting to polished. And like you said, details how solid our process is for reconditioning and making these things market ready.
It also doesn't, just to take it a step further, it doesn't even have to show what vehicle or what piece of inventory it actually is if it's all interior, just as a kind of aside. But I experienced this firsthand in a really micro moment where the last car I had, I sold it privately. And I did convince one of our dealer groups to do this as well. But I took all the photos that you would expect a dealership to have of my car in my driveway. I put a hat on said car. And then I wrote the most story-driven description that I've seen. And I'm sure I could make a killing doing just this, where it said, this bad boy, I fit all these things in the trunk. Before I had it, some local old gent had it, and it only had 3,000 kilometers on it all these years, and kind of these over-dramatized pieces where that sounds way more fun than one owner, local driver. When you say, oh, this thing had wonderful elderly owners that treated it with floral scented whatever, and documents these things, but doesn't make it boring. We don't need to be afraid of perfection. I think we should be more afraid of being boring.
Yeah. Which TikTok actually made me realize how boring my life actually is.
What do you mean? You don't vacuum in the same line every day before you organize your teapots? And
no, for me, it's more like I wake up and I take 7 hours making my bed perfectly and ironing my sheets and spritzing my pillow. I'm making fun of some dude on TikTok that I've seen who that's what he does. It's the most insane thing ever.
You just spritz the pillow while it's all a disaster, right?
Yeah. With disinfectant spray. Anyways, this was so much fun. I love doing episodes like this where they're a little bit more off the cuff and casual, and we get to just poke and prod at something. Before I turn it back to you to tell us where to get in touch with you, if you had to recap this and give us a couple of bullet points, 2, 3, 4 bullet points on what listener or watcher should be considering in order to make their marketing more sticky, what would they be?
Don't be boring. Keep it simple. Be different.
Be different. But how do I be different? Well, stop asking that question. That's a good place to start.
just go outside, look around, and do the opposite of that.
Yeah, I love it. Whit, thanks so much for joining me on the Dealer Playbook. How can those listening get in touch with you?
At Whit Norrad, everywhere you can, and flexdealer.com.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.